So Michelle Morrison really believes in the power of community, which is really on display in her work. And like I said, I can attest to that personally. She currently works in DesignOps at Dropbox. And previously, she's built a lot of people-centered programs at Facebook and Intercom, Square, IDEO, just places with a few people, a few creatives, and she's also helped build Designers and Geeks, which is San Francisco's largest design community and lecture series. And I love this, she's all cream and no sugar. So that is a lovely introduction to Michelle, and she's going to tell you more about her amazing work here with her session. So Michelle, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for spending time with me today and dialing in. I think Remote Design Week is such a solution to this working from home problem, and I'm so glad to be a part of it. I'm going to talk about designing culture and some of the things that I've learned while working on people problems. So let me introduce myself. I've built a career on process and culture. I started my career at Square, where I led the brand studio. I consulted with IDEO on some really exciting projects. I went on to Facebook and I focused deeply on design education and helping people get the most out of their careers. I went on to Intercom, and now I have a dream job at Dropbox, where I think really deeply about community and how to bring people together around problems that matter. As a program manager, my job is to take the pain out of the creative process. And having spent a decade in this space, I can tell you that the process is most painful when your culture's at risk. The thing that you want to think about as you're sort of contextualizing this for your environment is to think about how you work, whether it's a double diamond process or a process unique to your team. There are steps that you take to do your work, and there are sequences and rhythms and routines that you follow to design. It's just natural and part of the process. But often the process is really messy, and the steps never go in the exact order and sequence as you might want them to. They often look more like this. And the reason that a process can get messy or steps can fall out of sync is because the culture that drives that process informs how you react and respond to your environment and your work. And so it's important to talk about what culture actually is in order to make sure that the way that you work reflects your values and what you care about. When you look up culture in the dictionary, it reads that it's the manifestation of intellectual achievement regarded collectively, which, like, I've read this sentence so many times and I think it's totally abstract. Like, what does this really mean? And how do we talk about culture all the time, but it feels intangible? I like to think about culture as just the way that we work, but it's also how you feel. It can be how you interact with the other humans on your team. It definitely shows up in how you motivate people, and it's very clear in how you reward for good work. One very smart person said that culture is civilization at work, which helped me think about it totally differently. But for me in my work as an operator, I think about culture as how you act on your belief. How do you take something you care about and make it real through action? Why does it matter? Well, your most precious asset are the people who believe in the work. If you've ever seen the movie Office Space, it's the best, clearest example of work culture. Actually, the whole movie is about workplace culture and culture change. If you're not familiar, everybody in this photo here, they're engineers, office managers, they play different roles in this corporation. And the big corporate is coming in to manage a major shift. And people are in pain. You can see it on their faces. They're so upset and angry about what's happening. And they get so frustrated that they take their printer out into a field and completely destroy it as an outlet for their grief. They're really hurting during this change process. And no one has really brought them along in doing that. And it's a really great example of what culture is, because the group that you see here, they valued status quo. They liked the harmony of the office. They liked consistency and they knew what to expect every day. And as the culture started to change, it really put them in a position of defense. And unfortunately, they took that out on the printer. But what's really at stake with culture is it impacts your business results. It affects your agility, your ability to innovate. It definitely has an impression on your brand and can affect your reputation. But the thing that I care about the most at the end of the day is your ability to attract and retain talent. I learned in researching for this talk that the number one reason CEOs leave their company is not due to business performance, it's actually due to cultural alignment, which I think is a powerful way to think about the role that culture plays in your business, your company, your team, what it is that you're doing. So with all of that in mind, I want to talk to you about how we frame and have thought very deeply about designing culture at Dropbox. And I have a couple examples of what we do, but what I hope that you take away from this entire talk is the steps and the way you might be able to apply your design skills that you already have to a problem as big and messy as culture is. So super critical first step. You sort of want to clear your mind and go back to like a learner's mentality and start from scratch, because you need to start from a place of understanding. And often we don't fully understand the depth of people's experience. Once you're in that mindset, you can move on to understanding what individuals value. I'm sure that everybody dialing into this call has a one-on-one with one other human on their team. Even if you work independently, you do work one-on-one with people in any role. And it's important to learn what people, singular individual people, value. This is a photo of an activity we do a lot at Dropbox where we have these beautiful animal cards that we put out on the table. And one of the ways that we learn what people individually value is that we ask them to pull a card. It could be the geese, it could be the whale, it could be the elephants. And we ask them to tell a story about work. Is it something great that happened, something bad that happened? And we tune in, we listen to that story, because listening to people's experiences in the first person helps you understand what they might value and what they might care about. While animals are completely unrelated to the design practice, having something that's off-center and tangible helps people just get talking and sharing their experiences. If you're on a team, in an org, in a cross-functional group, once you understand what individuals value, you can start to explore what your shared values are. And so this might take shape in different ways. If you've ever had a retrospective or a postmortem, those are learning moments where you can listen and hear what people value. You can also do it explicitly. You might brainstorm your shared values and put them all up on the wall with sticky notes. But thinking about what you have in common will really help you understand what's going to serve you and what you want to commit to as a team. One thing that we do often at Dropbox is we love a dinner party. And dinner parties are this sort of low pressure, really enriching gathering moment for people where we can bring people across the industry or a single team together, sit down over a meal and really talk about what matters. What are we feeling? What are our hopes? What are our fears? And the format of a dinner party really gets you into a more comfortable state sharing your experience, less so than like a business meeting or a brainstorming session in front of a whiteboard. So you might think about, if I know what I care about and I want to learn what someone else cares about and explore what we have in common, think about where you're going to have that conversation or how you can facilitate that for groups of people. I'm also very food motivated, and so I love dinner parties for really any reason, but it's a practice that we have at Dropbox that I think really does a lot for bringing people together in person and like in spirit. When you know what you have in common and you want to think about what's going to serve you and drive your culture forward, it's important to take something you believe in, like the example I gave earlier was harmony, and decide which behaviors are going to make that real. How do you communicate? How do you make decisions? How do you face conflict together? How do you disagree? What are the steps you take to do those things? Making the behavior or naming the behavior helps you make a value real. It gives people instruction and tangible steps. An artist I really admire is Tom Sachs, and as part of his indoctrination process to his creative practice, he has folks read a zine called 10 Bullets, and it's a manifesto and it's a manual for how to participate in his creative practice. And while this is totally like an amazing artifact of the art world, you might think about making that for yourself. What does it look like to have 10 principles for your design team, or posters on the wall that sort of remind you of what it is that you're there to do every day? And then once you know what you're doing, once you know what individuals value, what your shared values are, and what behaviors make those values real, it's really important to move into the norming stage and reinforce and reward the behaviors so that they become like a pattern, an expectation, a promise to the team, something they can look forward to and something that they can reinforce every day that they show up. One of the things that I really love about Dropbox and I'm missing right now as I work from home is this amazing thing called the gratitude post. Something that we have learned through research and discovery is that people feel valued in their work and they feel a stronger sense of purpose and commitment to what they're doing when they feel recognized. And recognition happens at many scales. It happens at the promotion cycle, the performance review, when you get raises. It happens in small moments like meetings when you get a shout out or a one-on-one conversation with an executive. But it can also happen in really small and simple ways. And the benefit is tremendous. So the way the gratitude post works is that in every Dropbox office around the world, there are these walls of postcards. And the content changes, the artwork changes, the message changes. But any day of the week, you can walk up and grab a postcard and write literally a handwritten thank you note to someone who you work with. It can be Annette in the mailroom who helped me manage that terrible giant package, or it can be Andrea who helped me edit that blog post and fine-tune my words. But saying thank you turns out to be the cheapest and most rewarding way to reinforce that people are valued and are recognized for their work and contributions. And I just love that the simple act of kindness actually keeps us closer together. It reminds people of the good that they do, and it motivates them to continue to like lend a hand and help one another. And so this might look different. It might be a digital thing, and it might be a different value that you're trying to solve through reward loops within your own company or your team or your creative practice. But you want to think about what the desired result is and work your way back into an easy solution or something that feels really good to do again and again. And with all of that, like any good creative practice, you want to constantly critique and evaluate what you're doing. I like to host quarterly like culture retros and get people into a room to talk about what's serving us, what's working, what's not working, what are we not sure about, and what do we want to change? And having really transparent and open conversations about culture as something that you can shape and shift and design, we're able to make change and adapt and tailor our culture to the needs of the people who are a part of it. It's a big thing right now. We're all working from home. Like you can see my upstairs in my apartment right now. And that is a big shift in like bringing my work home and being able to think about what do I need? What do I want to change? And how am I going to do that for myself and for others is a really powerful way to approach your work and shaping that culture. Something that we faced at Dropbox that was really powerful for us was that we realized, this was through a poll survey, that people were afraid of failure. It was a big fear of the team. And the fear of failure was preventing us from being totally transparent, from showing work in progress. And that was something that we were facing company-wide in all groups and teams. A colleague of mine, Garrett, he designed a zine that was published and distributed throughout the company that talked about failure in 4 different archetypes. And people across the company could read the zine and think about kind of what their failure type was. For me, I'm a saboteur. If I think I'm not going to be perfect about something, I'll destroy a project or quit early because I fear failure. And it gave us a vocabulary to talk about failure in a way that everybody could relate to and really think about what changes we could make in our daily practice and our mindset to become more transparent and to work faster by sharing our work in progress. And it was such a powerful moment and framing to help us overcome something that's really messy and very personal and something that we do a lot to hide as professional people. And so this is, again, another tangible example, but it illustrates how you might think about solving something that's sticky and messy and difficult to talk about. And keep working on it. You're going to repeat these steps in different sequences based on what your needs are. And where you're at and the maturity of your company and your culture, your team, the people you surround yourself with. But as any good designer, you always want to iterate. You want to polish and refine and refine and refine because our careers are long and the, the work is endless. But we can always make it better for each other by investing in culture. So here are the infinite loop of culture building. And I want to remind you that your people are your most precious assets. There's a lot at stake with all of this. If you are familiar with Google's values, one of the early established values was don't be evil. And the company grew from a couple of people to over, I think they have like 40,000 or more people working for the company now, maybe 60,000. And don't be evil means something different to everybody else. It could be use good judgment and don't harm people with the technology you make. But as the society gets more complex and the team gets bigger and the breadth of their technology got bigger, what that meant changed for people. And it didn't resonate with the employees there. A couple leaders in the San Francisco offices organized a walkout to protest some business decisions that felt evil to them. And for a day, the news watched closely as people walked out of probably the best job in the world or one of the best jobs in the world to fight for something that they believe in. And so this is why iteration is so important, is because you have to change not just what you believe in, but what it means and how it gets practiced. Because people will walk out on you if it doesn't fit their value system. And the last thing I want to remind everyone of is that culture is an act of creation. It is not an act of consumption. When you go to those dinner parties, it's not about eating a really good dessert. It's about engaging and bringing your full self and showing up for others in that moment. And keep that in mind as you think about how you'll build and shape culture for yourself. This is a little resource. I don't know if anyone wants to take a photo of their screen, but if you're interested in following these steps in a step-by-step guide, a really amazing researcher named Jennifer Brooke worked with me and a few other people to design a kit that helps you work through this process and have these conversations with others. You can go to dropbox.design and on the resources page, you can download it as well. And I'll end with a quote from Mia Bloom, who is the best designer and design leader I've ever worked with. And she says, over time, you can influence it or shape it, but keep in mind that culture, like brands, form whether you intentionally create it or not. So my design friends, I challenge you all to create the culture that you want to be a part of. Thanks.
Virtual clap. Thank you so much, Michelle. That was amazing. I've been a big part of like growing the culture of a design at Adobe, and to see the work that you've done and the results the results speak for themselves. And the team at Dropbox and the design culture that's grown up around Dropbox. I feel like it's infected the whole company. So kudos to you on the amazing work with the team.
Thank you all. Thank you, Pri and Chantal and the whole team for being on the show. And thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you so much.